Yes.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order, and I'll proceed with roll call. Are we ready on the recording? Okay. Mr. Kaminsky?
Present.
Mr. Kunkel?
Yes.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Here.
Mr. Sager?
Here.
Mr. Scala is absent today. Ms. Von Bergen?
Here.
And I'm here. Call to order. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from last month? Mr. Kaminsky moves, Mr. Sager seconds. All those, any changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion carries. We had some public comment.
Yep, just one, Jim. Heather?
Thank you. Heather, and I can't, Cupsco.
Yeah,
Cupco.
the strange Hungarian name.
I butchered it worse.
Hi, good morning. This good?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I am Heather Cupso, and I am here to address the serious speeding issue on Cary Road in Algonquin, specifically between Main Street and Clawson.
Is that the airport runway?
It's almost. It pretended to be one for a short period of time. So on this stretch of road, the speed limit is 30 miles per hour. It became more and more evident that that was being exceeded on a regular basis. So we asked the McHenry County Sheriff's Department to do a speed study, which they were very happy to do. That data was collected between July 28th and August 4th. That data showed that over 25,000 cars were doing over 35 and 12,000 were doing over 40. In response to this, the Department of Transportation did put up speed signs, one going northbound, one going southbound. Data collected from those signs between October 9th and October 15th just became available a couple of days ago. In that study, it showed still that about 71% of people going southbound and 89% going northbound are still exceeding the are still exceeding the speed limit. So people are not taking these signs seriously, unfortunately. This stretch of road between Main and Clawson, it's a long stretch of road with no stops. If we look at that whole road, it's going from Main Street in Algonquin all the way to Main Street in Cary. So it's about a 4-mile stretch of road with no stops. This unfortunately encourages people to speed. Now, for what I'm hoping is that this committee can take a deeper look into these studies, into this data, and see what's really going on there and the level of dangerousness that is happening. In considering this, what I also believe should be looked at is the capability of the human mind of the vehicle. Human brain can see something in front of the car, and just to decide to do something about it is approximately 2 seconds. In that 2 seconds, the car is still moving. Then we have to add on the distance it takes for the vehicle to come to a complete stop. Of course, this is all if the driver's paying attention. So if, for example, somebody is abiding by the speed limit, they're doing 30 miles per hour, it takes approximately 120 feet for the car to stop. Not a short distance. We increase that to the 40 to 60 miles per hour that vast majority of people are doing on that road. That distance extends to 170 to 400 feet, so longer than a football field, to come to a complete stop. So the people, all of us who have to cross the road to get our mail, walking the dog, riding a bike, very dangerous situation, even for the wildlife that crosses that area frequently. Dangerous situation for everybody involved. So what I am looking for here today, what I am hoping for, is that this committee can take a look at all this information and take it in and look for some solutions for us that can help keep our neighborhood a little bit safer.
3 minutes, perfect.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you.
I had this down. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Joe, is this the one you want at the bottom of this meeting?
No.
All right.
Member comment.
Member comments? Anyone, anything? All right. Reports and presentations. We have an RTA budget presentation this morning.
We do. Joining us is Leanne Redden, and you might know her sidekick.
What, know this guy?
Kevin Boisel here.
I thought he got fired from his other job.
Well, thank you if that happened, because we picked it up.
Looking a little scruffy these days.
He started throwing it out after he left here.
So that he would have recognized me, but it sounds like that.
I guess he's trying to be incognito around town.
Yeah.
He was loving the commute this morning. He had, what, like 15 minutes to, especially with the snow and ice. But thank you, everyone. I'm Leanne Redden. I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Transportation Authority. As we do each year, we come out and give you a presentation. I kind of like this more little intimate setting, so sometimes we're for the full county board. And I know you'll be hearing from the other two service boards, PACE and Metra, in the coming weeks. So just to give you perspective, we're the regional entity. We don't actually operate any of the buses or trains. We're sort of the planning, the funding, the oversight, but we do operate several regional programs in the region, and I'll just touch on some of those. So the formality of what we have to do is kind of touch on the operating budgets and the capital programs for the coming years in the region, which is really the culmination of the three service boards' budgets. And so, just to kind of orient us where we're at, the transit system that includes CTA, Metra, and PACE the three operators have really worked to improve services, expand access across the region, and bring back riders. As we're really pleased to report that although we know that there's a lot of work ahead of us in the coming months and years, they all have continued to make a steady recovery. And we're encouraged by that continuing growth of ridership and the forecast of over 325 million rides regionally. And we're expecting to grow by almost 14% in ridership from compared to our 2022 numbers. So that's really starting to inch back up there, and we are seeing that steady increase. And actually, all three of the operators over the past several months/weeks have actually hit some of their highest ridership since the pandemic. And this is also, I think, helpful for us as we continue to work on our efforts to secure additional funding with our state legislature as our fiscal cliff is looming upon us. In 2024, the RTA and the service boards, continue to invest back in the system, really connecting communities in McHenry County and really the greater region to, as I said, build back ridership. So just to give you a sense, okay. Just to give you a sense on, we're missing a slide in this. So, but that's okay. Just to focus a little bit on McHenry County stuff. So MC Ride has been really a model of coordinated countywide demand responsive services, not just in the county, but really a model for around this whole region. And that has really been, I think, shown with the close partnership that you've had with PACE, to providing that safe, responsive, demand responsive and convenient service for those who really need to depend on public transportation. I think you actually have okay, it's out of order. Okay. That's okay. We can win with it. But I think you've got an item on your later agenda to talk about some funding for some local-based services as well. PACE's commitment to this service, I think, is also important too, and their 24 budget reflects an 8% increase in the MC Ride budget. I want to also note that we have been continuing to advocate for the state to fully fund both the ADA paratransit services for the region, as well as the reduced and free ride programs. You may be aware that the state requires that we actually provide these reduced and free ride programs, and ADA services are required by federal law across the region, but the state comes nowhere near close to actually supporting and funding those services. I can talk, well, to give you a sense of that, on the reduced and free ride programs for the region, it costs us about $250 million for the three operators to provide those services. The state provides $17 million in funding towards those programs. So when I talk about our fiscal cliff and you start to see some of those gaps, that if the state was actually to come forward and actually fund the programs that they require us to provide, it would go a long way to actually filling some of that deficit. On the Metro front, their latest budget continues their transition to what they're calling regional rail services, which is shifting their focus from just sort of a suburban to downtown-oriented service and looking to provide and modify schedules so they can provide more interline service and between points along their lines. It's complicated for them to do, but that is something that they're continuing to work on. And as well with their proposed budget, and they'll be here to talk a lot more detail about this, is their modified fare program and schedules for the coming year. And that actually, their commitment to regional rail and sort of that inter-suburban commute options is highlighted in the sense that they are providing the fares in those types of trips will actually be cheaper than what they were even pre-pandemic. So I think that these are some efforts that the service boards are also undertaking. So there's a couple of other things noted on here around the capital highlights of the programs that are being worked on, Pingree Road and Woodstock improvements as well. So how do I get back to this one? Okay. So before I want to walk through some of the more details on the operating budget, I want to make a point that I think several of you probably have heard me say, and I certainly know Dr. Saga has heard me say this before, that the region's transit system is really far too dependent on fares to really support its operations, and it's just not a sustainable model. While we recognize that fares are a very important component, it's not a sustainable model to expect that the region's operating costs are covered by 50% of the region's operating costs are covered by fares. And so what that really presents to us is really the biggest chunk of what our funding gap is going to be. And as we continue to work on that to secure more funding from our state legislators as well as potentially the federal government, these efforts are not just to fill our fiscal gap, but I think more broadly to really help us working on solving the broader region's goals of supporting climate, equity, economic goals, as well as bolstering and providing for a well-functioning transit system. Some of the details on the region's budget, it is balanced. I haven't had enough coffee today yet. Hey, I'm still good, I've got some though. And it is projected to have expenses of over $3.9 billion, which is a 9.5% increase from the 2023 budget. The service board expense growth ranges from 9 to 11%. As each agency continues to address some of the disruptions from the labor market that the pandemic caused. And each operator also intends to add service in 2024. CTAS and Metra are budgeting for service that will approach their pre-pandemic levels, so bringing them back to where they were. And PACE continues to provide innovations with new bus rapid transit service and partnerships to solve many of the first and last mile challenges that they face. They're also doing a very comprehensive full bus network study, which won't go into effect next year. The study goes into effect next year, but the results will take a little bit longer. But the point being to actually look at how they can respond better to the changing travel patterns of the region. On the capital side of our budgets, the 2024 capital budget for the entire region is going to be $1.78 billion, and the required 5-year capital program totals just shy of $6 billion. So the agency budgets assume ridership at a collective just about 62% pre-COVID levels. There are no fare increases planned across any of the operators. And as I already noted, that Metra's fare policy and zone revamping actually also results in lower fares than pre-pandemic levels. The proposed regional budget and the 2-year plan projects that the federal relief funding will begin to run out in late 2025, and that will result in a fiscal cliff of more than $730 million in 2026, beginning in 2026, which I think the more important number to think about is that actually represents 20% of the operating budgets for the entire region. So we talked about that. This just gives you a little bit of a sense of where the funding comes from. And what you can see from this is that the federal relief funding no surprise, is representing just shy of the 20%. So that's of our operating budgets. And so when those funds are depleted, that's where you see that budget deficit. On the expense side, you can see where those dollars go, split around the region between CTA, Metra, and PACE ADA Paratransit Service. I will just note that the RTA budget is a small 1.3% of the region's budget. It represents just over a 1% increase from last year, so we have worked really hard to keep our costs down. So we're ensuring as much of the monies are available for the 3 service boards and their operations. All right, so just to provide a little bit more about the vision of where we're going and how we want to continue to recover post-COVID, and a little bit about the fiscal cliff that's coming. And our board, the RTA board with Director Salga, approved the Transit is the Answer, which is the region's strategic plan back in February this year. And it is really, I just want to give you a quick look at some of the implementation and activities that we have undertaken around that plan, really to ensure and sort of live up to the vision that we have promoted, that is for a safe, reliable, accessible public transportation system that connects people with opportunities, advances equity, and works with us to combat climate change. So the Transit is the Answer plan is really a way of making sure that we're connecting the most vulnerable people in our region to jobs and healthcare and other opportunities. It's our region's transit system also gives thousands of residents with disabilities and older adults that independence through ADA paratransit services, as well as I've mentioned, some of the reduced and free ride programs. And our first goal with our state legislature is to work with them to fully fund some of those programs. Next year, the RTA, in partnership with Metro and Cook County, is proposing a pilot expansion of the reduced fare program on Metra to residents of the entire region. So even though Cook County is actually partnering with us and providing us some funding, that opportunity will be made available to riders of the entire region. And we're looking to expand the reduced fare program to people that are currently eligible for the SNAP program, so the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, historically or commonly sometimes referred to as the food stamp program. So basically, we know that the households that are essentially experiencing low incomes in our region represent approximately about 1.2 million people. And so this 18-month pilot will allow residents to apply through the RTA for those reduced fare benefits to ride Metra at a significantly reduced fare rate. The RTA already administers the reduced and free ride program, so it's just some additional responsibilities that we are taking on and looking to, those existing programs, I just want to note too, aren't going to change during the terms of this pilot. So the hope is that this program will attract ridership back, but more importantly, put money back into the pockets of people who may actually need it the most, and allow them to consider riding Metra for, access to jobs, healthcare, or even just to generally move around the region. At this time, the pilot is not going to include CTA or PACE. However, we are working with them closely. They do want to expand in this program as well, but we will need to find additional funding to support that further expansion. The service boards also continue to make a lot of good fare progress on fare integration. CTA and PACE have expanded their shared passes in recent years and operate completely seamlessly in the same Ventra system. Metra uses the Ventra system, but through the app process. Metra has also incorporated an unlimited $30 regional connect pass to their monthly pass, which allows any Metra rider to ride unlimited and seamlessly across CTA and PACE as well. And we look forward to some exciting new options that we are working on. More information to come on those in the future as we continue to show, more importantly, I think, our legislators that we can deliver changed and improved services and programs across the region. The additional funding is going to be critical to help us deliver on some of the reforms and some of the improvements, some of which I've touched on, and some of which we're kind of considering for the future, really to improve the transit system, make it more convenient, more affordable, and better accessibility across the region. We continue to advocate with partners and look for partners to continue to work with us as we continue that conversation in Springfield. And we are working to implement our transit is the answer, including the development. Some of the other work that we are doing at the RTA is a climate action plan, a transit-friendly communities guide, which is a document that will allow local municipalities and counties to sort of better think about and how to integrate and plan for improved transit services and accessibility to existing services as well. We're also collaborating with the City of Chicago Mayor's Office on some safety and security issues, and we'll continue to work on some of those challenges that we're facing more in the urban area. We will also continue to work on transparently reporting our data and information to not just elected officials and our board, but to the public at large, as we look to build that support and build a coalition for advocates and riders as we look to support our broader legislative agenda. So some of the transit legislative reforms, we know it's going to take a lot of leadership and a lot of effort in Springfield, and on the transit agency's part, continuing to implement reforms and some of these new programs to show our commitment to providing better services to the region. So just a couple of minutes on some of the legislative priorities that we are focusing on. As an example here, the RTA, this actually came out of some state legislation passed earlier this year. Just feels like it's January today. The RTA implemented a program to supply prepaid transit cards to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assaults. We recently funded and delivered 20,000 preloaded Ventra cards with $20 on them to the partners at what the group is called the Network, who are an advocacy and support organization who support people trying to basically escape and get away from domestic violence situations. So we'll continue to work with that group on that program that the state asked us to stand up. We're also expanding the region's transit benefit program that will allow workers to across the region to pay for transit using their pre-tax dollars. And starting January 1, businesses with 50 or more employees with frequent access to transit. So if you're in an area that doesn't have really any real close proximity, it's not a requirement. But others will be required to have put those programs together and make them eligible or available to their employees. It's another way where we're also thinking about the way to sort of grow the transit ridership, working with different groups like employers to do that. On the capital side, the RTA and service boards are continuing to spend and deliver on the Rebuild Illinois funds, the former state capital program, as well as the significant amount of federal funds from the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So that's over about $3.5 billion programmed regionally toward using those dollars towards delivering actual capital projects. I noted this already, but we are continuing to evaluate new criteria that prioritize projects to make sure that we are improving access to opportunities, safety, and reliability while really helping spur economic development, as I mentioned, related to continued recovery post-COVID, as well as promoting racial equity and broader mobility across the entire region. So just to a couple of quick things on our legislative agenda. It really is the opportunity for us to provide the lawmakers of our region a better understanding of what the challenges in the fiscal cliff that we are facing are. We continue to collect feedback from everybody around the region, including legislators, county boards, staff, our board as well. And we have formed what we've called Transit is the Answer Coalition, really to engage key stakeholders and riders to really continue to give us that feedback as we work forward. Our legislative agenda, just a couple of quick highlights on some of the specifics. Any discussion around our transit system really needs to begin with the current fiscal challenges that we're facing and the acknowledgement of really that historic underfunding that the transit system has faced. We continue to confront a new set of conditions following the pandemic, and the system really, we recognize, needs to continue to evolve. Particularly when it comes to reducing our reliance on fare revenue and boosting access for riders who are most dependent on our transit system. And we continue to underscore the historic funding challenges the state support and look for state support. There is an understanding sort of this shared goal of improving efficiency, cost savings, and accountability. So sort of that balance between, the new and different things we have to do, but also finding those cost saving opportunities across the three service boards. We'll continue with our work on some fair policies, look to prioritize capital projects, and really with an eye on incentivizing transit ridership and supporting those projects that really, I think, help us support climate issues and our sustainability goals. So just to wrap up, the staff are also here with me today. So Kevin and we've got Kendra and Zach hiding in the back. They're going to be available after the meeting if anybody wanted to talk to them more and sort of provide any additional feedback. Next month, the service boards are going to be at our RTA board. So CTA, Metro and PACE representatives will be presenting to the board, our board of directors on November 16th, going through the details of their regional budgets. We will also be open for public comment through December 7th. People can do that through our website or contact our communication staff or talk to us, government affairs teams at these and meetings around the region. We'll hold our virtual meeting, our virtual public hearing, I should say, on from 4 to 6 on December 14. Make sure I get my dates right here.
The hearing is on the 7th.
So yes, you're right, the hearing is on the 7th, the board meeting is on December 14. That's when the board hopes to actually adopt the actual budgets. If I said December 16, I meant November 16, which is the coming board meeting next week. Like I said, I feel like I'm in January already. In all of that period, we're open to public comment. We are going to also host a coalition meeting in person downtown, December 5th. And we will be encouraging input on the budget as well as some of our other activities and agenda. So with that, I will wrap up and happy to try to answer any questions. And if there's hard ones, that's why Kevin's here.
So that I can defer.
Okay, questions? Comments, anybody? I've got a couple. You mentioned the climate action plan, and I know the electric engines and everything. What stages of development is that in?
So the plan is in early stages of development, but what I should say, it's an update to a plan we did about 10 years ago. So it's really a new look because of the large infusion of mostly federal monies for the three operators to electrify their systems, especially on the bus side. But I'll tell you, Metro, and they'll probably talk about this when Jim's out here, or their staff are out here, they're actually gotten a grant to, and they're actually trying to procure it right now, the first true electric small unit trains that'll be allow them to, it'll be just testing, but so they're looking to more formally electrify as well over time. Their goal is 2040, so it's not tomorrow. There's some real logistical challenges around doing this. I mean, everybody's converting to electric vehicles, and so the bus manufacturers are also the school bus manufacturers, and and we've only got 3 bus manufacturers in the US that actually can produce electric buses, and one of them is in bankruptcy right now, so they're hoping that they'll be purchased by one of the other guys. So there's some logistical challenges, but it's also, as the 3 operators will say, the easiest part is actually just buying the vehicle. The hardest part is making sure that the broader infrastructure and systems are all able to support, and I think you can appreciate this even at the county, looking at fleets and conversions and things like that over time. It's challenging, how you're revamping garages, is the grid able to cope? How do they, especially for PACE, who runs very long routes that aren't sort of stopping at a depot in the middle of the day, for example, where do they recharge through the day and things like that. So there's a lot of logistics, but they have all made that commitment to 2040. And it's pretty aggressive along the way. They actually anticipate, and there's, and I'm not going to get what the date is correct, I can't remember the year, but the state also passed legislation saying they can't buy any new diesel buses after 2026, thank you. This is why I have other people here to help me. But so they all have made that commitment. The plan, though, will be, I think, a way to document the work that they're doing, and then from a more comprehensive way, lay out the sort of the roadmap going forward.
Okay. I hope their diesel buses, they have their infrastructure in place before 2026 then, if they can't buy them anymore.
They are working on that. Now, I will say that the law doesn't require, it doesn't have at this point any penalties in it if they don't meet it. The point being, and there was a clause essentially added in there that sort of said, should the market allow them? Because I mean, there's this very real issue of just supply chain on providing that stuff. So with a goal, strong sort of try to work toward this, but they're not necessarily at this point going to be penalized if they don't get it.
Okay, so my other question is this cliff that we're approaching, 2026, I think you stated it. There's some what ifs in there. I mean, my concern has been like the MC ride, you know, we've expanded that throughout our county and you mentioned a lot of ridership, you know, free rides, reduced fares and different things. Suppose you don't make that cutoff time of raising revenues to replace that. Isn't the most vulnerable people the ones who are going to suffer the most out of that shortfall?
Yes.
And here we're expanding those programs to try to help those people, and I understand that, but we're expanding. Isn't that kind of the cart before the horse situation? If you don't have the funds in 2 years, you're not going to have the funds possibly, and all those programs, before you get them off the ground, you have to cut them. So what's the alternate plan? What kind of cuts would we be looking at? That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
What kind of cuts would we be looking at as McHenry County?
So I can't off the top of my head give you exact numbers, but I mean, they will be devastating cuts. I mean, we actually say that we cannot increase fares and reduce service enough to fill that gap. So it's not a realistic scenario. So this is why we're encouraging, you know, everybody around the region to engage in this conversation and help us in our conversation with our state legislature. To the point about some of the expansion of some of these programs, some of which we were required by state law to, you know, the domestic violence program was put into law that we had to stand that program up. I think, though, we and the three operators are sort of walking this very fine line about how do we show that we are committed to providing more accessibility, more opportunities for people who might need it the most, with not necessarily digging ourselves a deeper hole, if you will, right? And so one of the reasons Metra is sort of so interested in advancing this program initially is, to some extent, some of the costs on their side are sunk costs, right? So they're already running the trains back and forth, for example. And so their hope is that even though, one, it will grow some ridership, and provide those services and opportunities to people. But two, even though it may not be full fare revenue, it's some additional revenue coming in. So we're sort of balancing this conversation with our elected officials by saying we can change and we can do more. Money is really the issue, so we need them to come to the table and help us solve part of this problem. And that's why one of our first priorities is, while we've got this very big ask that we recognize is a very big hole to fill, that we may not get it all filled, and they're not just necessarily going to sort of wave a magic wand and give us $1 billion. It's more likely that, you know, we might end up having to chip away at this, and so that's why we've put sort of as priority one, fully funding the ADA services and the reduced and free ride programs. We've got a lot of data behind the work that we've done, and share this with legislators as we talk to them, and we can share this. I know Scott's seen some of these things. We can share more of this with you, but our state is woefully behind in terms of how much they fund public transportation compared to our peers around the country. And, you know, so kind of highlighting or reminding them of that gap. And they've been lucky because we're relatively a large, big, and I know in McHenry you may not sort of think this, but it's a fairly urban, developed region. So fare revenue has been something we could rely on historically. But really, post-pandemic, I mean, the people are riding the transit system. We're carrying over 1 million people each day. And what's happening, though, is especially on the Metra system, you will see, and then on CTA is paced as well, but you will see that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are fully packed trains like pre-pandemic. There's people sitting in the stairwells. I'm a regular rider, so I see this too. But on Mondays and definitely on Fridays, it's like a weekend service. And so they're trying to modify their services, but a lot of those costs are sunk costs. And so it's not that people don't want to ride, so where the focus is now on how are we supporting, thinking about our transit system. It's not just about ridership, it's about that broader economic support. So even if people are working from home 2 or 3 days a week, they still need to get to their place of employment in most cases several days a week. So you can't turn the transit system off, because that's 1 million people that are going to be on the roads, which I certainly don't think many of us want. So,
Matt?
So, obviously, this does require 100% that this is a push towards our legislation, because they're just woefully underfunding us. All of our balanced budgets and all we do for our county and other counties do are barely keeping our ridership and keeping our rides that we provide going. But certainly, if our legislature can put up $1 billion towards health care for illegal immigrants, there's got to be some money there in legislation. Where and when and how all of us unite to attack that, that's the big key. Because if they want it, and as you said, we can't put another 1 million people on Illinois roads. That's another entire situation that our legislation will have to face if that happens.
they'd have to fund something else.
But it seems to me historically that in this state, they wait till we actually fall off the fiscal cliff before we face these issues. So I think we need to move forward on making this county's opinion known towards that. So I'm fully behind that.
And I will say that the county and staff have been incredibly supportive and engaged with us through all of these conversations, including stealing one of your former employees. But I think that what you're saying is sort of music to my ears, because it is going to be an all-out push on Springfield to continue. And right now, we're really in this space of making sure the legislators understand that this is coming. It's really hard to sort of get them engaged for something that's going to happen in 2026. They do prefer to wait. So
Until we fall off the cliff.
yeah, and hopefully not. And the hard part with the transit system, it's not like a light switch you can turn on and off. I mean, it takes years to sort of wind down, and the consequences are dire. And then if we thought it's hard digging out from the pandemic, it's going to be even harder from if we have to shut down service and try to build back. It's not that sort of on-off kind of situation. So working continuously with them, we are already working very much engaged with both leadership and rank and file members in Springfield, both in district and in Springfield, talking to them about what the challenges are, trying to keep their attention on this issue, because we know that we're not the only people that are sort of talking about what their funding needs are, but continuing to work with them and helping them recognize kind of, even it's beyond just the ridership number, but what are the economic upsides and downsides to a well-funded transit system.
Pam, this is added to our list.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I thought you were going to ask about the cards, the scanning cards.
No.
Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to say a couple different things. First off is that we have a tendency right now to really be strongly focused on the $730 million shortfall and concerned about the fiscal cliff, which is most appropriate. But I think that we also need to think very positively about our transit system here. We have one of the preeminent transit systems in the United States, and it's really important that we focus on that. The point right now is that we want to not only continue that reputation, but we want to move forward in a very positive, visionary manner. So I think that's really, really important to consider. Here in McHenry County, Leanne and Kevin, couple of our most significant questions that always come up is a universal fare system. That's an issue that we constantly hear. And so I know that you mentioned we're working on that. The concern out here in this area is that we've been saying we're working on this for the last 10 years. And so, that's one of those things that people in our area would truly like to see an increase in a focus on. And that's not news. We've talked about that before. The venture system with Metro is working in that direction, but we need to expand that and make things more seamless, as you're well aware. Another thing that we talk about in this area, and you also mentioned the Rebuild Illinois Fund, but the whole concept that was kind of introduced to all of us, much to our surprise, if you will, was the governor's visit that says that we're going to now have a passenger service that goes from Chicago to Rockford, and that's going to be operated basically by Metra. And so that's a big question that we all have, and we not only have that with regards to how is that going to work, but how is it going to be paid for. And I mean, we know that the fund is going to be there to quote unquote put it in place, but if Metra is going to be the one that operates that, how is that going to be covered? And then we have the whole governance aspect with the RTA board, the Metra boards. Does that introduce then the Boone County? Does that introduce the Winnebago counties into the system, et cetera? So you're well aware of those things, but that's the talk in this particular county. And of course, the other thing is that we hear from CMAP as well. We're all a part of CMAP, and we know full well that the legislature charged CMAP with the responsibility for putting a report together regarding transit, as we've all started to look at this need from the state legislature and the federal government to help in supporting transit here in Illinois. But we've heard about the PART report, and we know that, and it's important for everyone here to understand, we know that this RTA has presented basically 18 options for funding opportunities for revenue generation, but the CMAP report, that PART report, has kind of reduced that, and they're focusing not just on ways of increasing revenues, but also take a look at the governance issue and that. And I think in our board meeting of RTA, we tried to say, let's separate those issues. Let's not get them too combined, and let's focus on the revenue first and dealing with that. And so I think it's important that everyone hears that we are working very, very hard and very aggressively to identify options. Hopefully the CMAP PART report will not focus the legislature totally on absolute reduced numbers of revenue options, but continue to look at the full opportunities which exist out there for revenue generation. I mean, even if something only generates $2 million, $2 million is $2 million, and we need to look at what we can bring in terms of optional revenues. But I think it's important for everybody here that there is a significant amount of work going into all of the planning and all of the effort to try to deal with that shortfall which is coming. It's not just something we're talking about. We're not putting our eggs all in one basket. We're looking at a variety of different options in that regard. And I have to end by saying we are blessed here in Northeastern Illinois to have an incredible staff at the RTA. They are incredibly professional individuals with a depth and breadth of knowledge, which I think is unparalleled, frankly. And the other thing I have to say is that Kevin has been a wonderful addition to the finance department there. And so even though we apologize for taking him from McHenry County and moving him over there, he is a great addition. And the staff is doing a yeoman's job of planning and looking towards not just dealing with the fiscal cliff, but moving us into the next century, as it were, with regards to our advances in terms of transit opportunities. So kudos to the staff and the staff of all of the service agencies as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Well, thank you so much for this presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Kevin, can't wait to see your fix on the clip.
Your work is financial.
I know you got it. I know you got it.
We'll come back to that.
Okay, moving to the routine consent agenda. Is there any items members would like to pull?
Thank you.
Give you a second if you're looking for something. If not, do I have a motion to approve items of the consent agenda? Mr. Kunkel makes the motion to approve 6-1 through item 632. Is there a second? Mr. Comiskey seconds that motion. Okay. Any last minute discussion before we proceed to vote? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Kunkel,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sager,
Yes.
Ms. Van Bergen,
Yes.
Mr. Kaminsky,
Yes.
and I will vote yes.
Can we take care of you, Joe?
I was gonna say, that went a little smoother than I thought it was.
There was a couple of things, but then I did more in-depth research, so I shut my mouth.
Okay. All right, new business, Ms. Altoff is here and wanted to discuss PACE funding for Township bus program.
Can I join you as a?
Yes, I want you to. I was looking for you. You were gone.
So can you give a little background of how this
I
came
will,
about?
and thank you very much for the courtesy. You know, all of you know that I truly believe that communication is extraordinarily important. You are the Transportation Committee members. I apologize for the sunglasses. I apologize also for the smell. I brought a really bad eye infection back from Africa, and you don't want to see it this early in the morning. And I also went and worked out, so I'm a mess. But anyway, I believe that I need to keep you informed as to what efforts are going on with regard to senior transportation. As you know, Tracy Van Bergen, who's the chair of Public Health, appointed me to chair the Senior Services Commission. And every time we have a meeting, and you also know that I've been around here for a very long time, 20 years, we have done nothing at that level when we talk about seniors is to talk about transportation and how we provide decent transportation for the seniors in our county, particularly in the northwestern quadrant, which is where the heaviest demographic of older individuals live, which is that Hebron, McHenry, Spring Grove, Richmond, Riley Township areas. What we try to do with our allocations, if you'll remember, I reported on this at one of the board meetings, is rather than divert money from our senior services grant program to additional transportation, because many senior organizations provide some type of transportation, we were trying to get our arms around it and coordinate. So what we thought we might be able to do is find a way to find some funds from PACE to provide funds to some of those townships in that quadrant to provide transportation to seniors. And what we've learned, Matt, Tracy, you might want to add into this because of the comments at Public Health and at Senior Services. What we've discovered is seniors who reach a certain age have completely different transportation needs. It's not as if they can just use public transportation. They need assistance with getting their groceries on the bus. They need assistance getting themselves on the bus. They need assistance in being able to know that that transportation is available to them when they are done at the doctor, when they are done shopping. They don't have really the availability of staying on that bus for a long period of time, for whatever reasons. There's a wide variety of reasons for that, but they can't do it. So it really is somewhat of a unique situation and a unique area that we're trying to address. Scott can give you an update, unfortunately, on what we did hear from PACE. And while I understand all of their rationalization, and I do from a state level, I'm extraordinarily disappointed, and it doesn't mean that I don't want all of us to continue to try and find a solution in providing the services that our seniors need to remain in their homes, which is the purpose of the Senior Services Commission, and to do it in a coordinated fashion so we're not spending 2 cents here and 5 cents there and 10 cents here and still not getting a decent service to our seniors. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here, is to talk to you about what we want to do and how we want to use that opportunity, working very collaboratively with Scott and the Department of Transportation. But you're the Transportation Committee. We need to keep the dialogue going between what we're doing on that side for the seniors and what you're doing overall for the county. So having said that.
Yeah, that was a good recap. So yeah, again, the Senior Grant Commission asked me to reach out to PACE and at least start a conversation around, is it possible for PACE to kick in some money for these senior bus, township bus programs up in the northeast part of the county? I sent the request about a month ago. I got a response. Basically, in a nutshell, PACE said they fully support the coordination efforts that are happening up in the northeastern corner of the county. They think township coordination of bus services is a great thing, but at this point in time, they cannot provide funding for a variety of reasons. The first is, I mean, they just crafted their budget. Their budget's not approved yet, but it's essentially been it's done at this point. So the request came too late in their budget process to even consider. Secondly, they view township bus programs as more of a specialized concierge type service where their state charge is really providing public transportation. They view township bus programs not as public transportation, but more as a senior specialized service, right? So it's just kind of a divergence of philosophies around bus services. The third thing they mentioned, and I wholeheartedly agree, they're embarking on this driving innovation plan to kind of reimagine what transit could look like in the suburbs. And they said that as they do that, they'll keep issues like this in mind. And maybe there's some other third option that we're not even talking about right now that could help the senior population up in that part of the county. So, long story short, the answer from PACE was no, we cannot provide additional funding. I don't think that stops the conversation around this. It's just sort of, we can check that off our list as something to consider.
Which also means that that contingency fund that we set aside for the township transportation services, we'll have a meeting and we'll go ahead and allocate those funds to those townships so that they can continue those services. But we will also continue to work with them. McHenry Township has graciously offered to coordinate with the other two entities that provide similar services and kind of work as the lead agency and provide those services to the other areas. They're the largest. They also have probably the more available funds for those kinds of programs. So that's step one, and I think that that's working well. Gary Barla's, are you here? Did I see you? I did see you come in. So Gary Barla, who is the road commissioner, is doing a wonderful job in trying to coordinate that. That's step one. Step two will be continue to work with PACE and see if there aren't voucher programs, et cetera. And then also to pull in all of our senior organizations and find out what they're doing to provide transportation. One of the issues that we're grappling with too is finding bus drivers. That's the other issue that all of a sudden is out there, is that we don't have enough bodies to fill the buses to provide the services. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed. I didn't want to be out there and have Scott working on something without your express knowledge and somewhat agreement. So that's one of the reasons I asked to appear before you. I think you need to know what the other entities are doing and that we are attempting to try and solve the senior services issue. Keep people in their homes. I mean, that's the number one issue. We want people to stay in an environment that they feel safe and comfortable in. And one of the biggest challenges is then providing them with the transportation if they're no longer driving and getting them to their doctors, getting them their groceries and all those basic needs.
And the last thing I'll mention is that we talked about the rideshare program last month or 2 months ago, whatever it was. Assuming that gets rolled out in early 2024, I envision that type of program helping these seniors that we're talking about, right? It would take them downloading the Lyft app. It would take them getting registered for PACE reduced fare cards, or for RTA reduced fare cards. But that type of program is another example of ways that we could supplement what's already out there. The Township bus program, MC Ride still is available to them. This would be a third option if people wanted to use that to get more of a spontaneous ride.
And we've talked about, again, to seniors' difficulty downloading apps and seeing what's there, but we do it with Medicare enrollments, right? We have senior organizations that assist seniors in doing that. I envision the same sort of assistance with regard to trying to download an application or becoming part of the program. But it is an area that I want you all to know that, we'll be working with a great deal of enthusiasm and support. Matt, you want to add to that? You were there with all those conversations. Appreciated.
Mr. Sogleby, the yin to my yang, but I'm telling you right forward, I don't believe, from what I've heard in this committee in my short tenure here, that we get enough out of PACE. We get lots and lots of excuses. And there are all sorts of efficiencies that they, notwithstanding driver issues and things, that's a today thing. But this committee has gotten all sorts of excuses for PACE, why we can't pay electronic, why these people can't get to the, these are efficiencies that would provide some of these services because of the dollar gain growth. I think we all know that, but again, we keep going back to PACE and we're putting the maximum effort here and we're getting the minimum result from PACE. I think there needs to be some way of putting some leverage to that.
Go ahead, I
I know,
want this to
just-
actually be an open conversation back and forth
Thank you.
without calling on people.
I concur. However, to give PACE its due, they have met with us once already. They have offered to continue to do that. I think that that's the challenge, Matt, is to really educate them, bring them in and say, we expect more. I mean, to lay it out there and be very blunt
I think this county should
about.
demand more from them, I
Right.
really do.
But I don't disagree that,
No,
and I think they're
smooth over
changing.
what I just did here.
I also think it is a challenge
But you're
because,
right.
we're in the midst of looking at things differently, and I know that they're grappling with that too. I mean, they do have ideas with the vouchers, they do have ideas on some other programs, so they too are in the midst of transition, and it isn't always easy for those state agencies to be as nimble as we want them, but you're absolutely
the elderly
correct.
of this county, the seniors of this county
I-
definitely need more.
Oh, yeah.
20 years of a frozen number and all those things and the budgets that we face, we need to have all of our constituents, all of our people and services doing more for seniors in the slightest way, even just developing efficiency through PACE, in the slightest way that it could all lean towards seniors.
I concur, that's why I'm here. Again, you can't ask, pick a number, somebody over the age of 70, to stand outside or to stand in one of those little bus shelters and wait for 25 minutes. And that is the service we have with McBride, basically, right? I mean, and it just doesn't work for people over a certain age or with a certain limitation. It just doesn't work, and we have to figure out a way to make that much more user-friendly than we currently have now. So I want the conversation to remain open, between the Public Health Committee as well as with Transportation and figuring out what we need to do and how McHenry County needs to step up and put some pressure on our state agencies to assist us.
So here's been one of my thoughts on the whole thing. I've always respected the township busing program from McHenry and Hebron doesn't have one yet, but the Ringwood, Richmond area.
Hebron has a small one.
Hebron's got the small ones? Okay.
Yeah, they have, it's Hebron.
Okay, well, that was the village I was trying to.
Yeah, right, it is the village.
Okay, so anyway, I've always respected that because in Grafton Township, we had a senior bus program. And I know there's differences between programs. And however, when we got into the Grafton Township one, that's in the financial struggles and different things, the service from PACE, from the McBride, we joined it. We're probably one of the first ones to join that.
You did,
Yes.
yeah.
And we joined that program. And at our time, with our ridership, we only had 2 riders that couldn't fulfill on the PACE side. However, I recognize that McHenry and Richmond have a whole different system, which is very much more friendly and helpful to the seniors. And I agree that there should be a way to expand that somehow through a coordinated effort. We fund a lot of programs, the Senior Grant Service, Mental Health Board, the county, we help fund for the courts, the busing program, right?
Yep, senior care volunteer.
And so I'm trying to say this where it halfway sounds intelligent and makes sense, I should say. But we have a lot of entities trying to do the same thing and to coordinate them to where it becomes more of a countywide program and not just benefiting one small area, because seniors are all over the county here and it's growing and it's growing. We're all getting older, and, you know, Pam wouldn't be so old if she would stay out of those bar fights in Africa. And,
But can I'm going to interrupt you. That's exactly why I'm here. You have much more articulately stated the challenge in doing that. We need to do a better job of coordinating, because what happens is, you know, human nature. We pick the service that provides us with what we're looking for, whatever that is. We just need to do a better job of coming with something that's using our money much more efficiently and still providing the services that our seniors need at all those different levels.
and
Because
there's a
we're
lot of
spending way.
duplication of efforts
everywhere.
trying to do the same thing and being inefficient because of that. And the senior bus service that your senior grant commission, it was like 70,000 that they asked for.
50.
Was it 50 that they asked for?
Actually, they asked for 45, we gave them 50.
Okay. And so that's only a part of them, and that doesn't put them out of business if they don't get it, but I'd rather give it to them if we could make them more successful in that. And I'd rather figure out a way that we could do it much like our court one.
The
And then
difficulty.
maybe we could help some funding countywide as a county differently than just where we're doing it now.
And just to be clear, the difficulty that the commission ran into is that we only have 1.6 million, and that's all we've ever had for 20 years, as you well know when we talked about budget. And it's difficult to allocate money to transportation only in a certain area when the needs have grown so significantly in all those other organizations as well. I mean, we talk in our own budgets. Salaries have significantly increased. If you want to get people to stay in a job, you know, that provides those services to the people that we represent, you need to pay them a living wage. So all of that has increased over time, and we still only had 1.6. So it was a struggle as to where to allocate those funds appropriately. And so that's really what made us come forward and think maybe we could work with PACE, maybe we could work with the county, maybe we could work with whomever, so that we do provide the services, but we're not stealing money away from other senior programs that are extraordinarily important as well.
And I alluded to one of my questions of the presenters today is, I don't want to be glum about it. I'd like to be positive. But I see if they have a major shortfall because of our mismanagement in the state side, neglecting that the ones who need it the most would be the ones who are going to suffer the most out of that. And so countywide, if we could do that ourselves a little bit more somehow, and I guess that's where I was alluding to when I asked that question, because I believe, personally, I don't have any facts, I believe our MC Ride program in the future is going to be at jeopardy.
Can I jump? Do you mind? Two things. One, we'll talk about some strategy in law and government about how to address this. But number two, I want all of you, again, I'm beating it up, I want all of you to be extraordinarily cognizant about any reorganizational structures with the boards, RTA, Metro, PACE, and what happens to McHenry County. If we lose our representation on those boards, we are in deep, deep trouble, because money will be allocated to where it always goes, which is Chicago.
Right.
And again, the collar counties that need these services are going to suffer. And part of our problem, Matt, with Springfield is you have to remember where RTA is located, and that it only serves, even though it's the biggest portion of the population, it only serves a certain geographical area. And we have difficulty sometimes getting legislators to understand.
It's easily seen in the pie chart.
You got it. Okay. So just, I want us to be very cognizant of ensuring that whatever happens with RTA, the budget, that McHenry County still has the importance of having representation on those boards, so that our message gets out there.
Ryan?
So thank you.
I don't have a difference of opinion than my colleague here, Matt, because I honestly believe that we as a county have been dramatically underserved by PACE. I mean, we have 3 fixed routes. That's it in McHenry County. And I think that PACE could do a much better job of servicing our needs. I concur that we have done a lot in this county to try to fill the gaps and fill the voids. And I think that the townships, I think the county deserves a lot of kudos for that fact. And I think the challenge is that we can't continue just to put on another type of Band-Aid. We've got to come up with a larger approach, working with PACE, and it needs to be very deliberate and very focused in terms of just, as you say, demanding that service. Now, getting to Pam's points with regards to the politics of the transit system in the state of Illinois. Let there be no mistake, Chicago runs the game. If you look at
I love you.
the RTA board, the RTA board is composed of representatives from the counties in Northeast Illinois, because the RTA is supposed to work with the service agencies which serve our entire area. But politically, Cook County chairman appoints 5 members. Mayor of Chicago appoints 5 members. That's 10 members. There is 1 representative from the other 6 collar counties, right? That's it. Now, the legislature, in an attempt to try to balance things, has said, well, in order to get things through, you have to have a supermajority, so that you have to have 10 votes. So if somebody in the suburbs wants to come up with an idea and demand X, Y, or Z, we've got potentially 6 votes in the collar counties. But then that means what? We have to get 4 votes from Chicago and or Cook County. Not likely. Chicago and Cook County, if they want to get something done, they've got 10 votes. They can get it done pretty quickly. And so it's a major, major, major issue in terms of what that particular balance is. Pam is alluding to the fact that this CMAP report that comes out is being driven, let there be no mistake, it's being driven by Cook County, which says that we want to have not only an effort to fund the transit system from the state and the federal government, but we also want to change the governance. Now, how are they going to change the governance? Well, there's 2 primary proposals out there at the moment. One of them is to get rid of all the boards with all the current representation and have 1 board that not only looks at the planning and the financing and the vision, as Leanne was talking about earlier, but it's to operate then all of the 3 systems, plus the paratransit. So 1 board to do all that. Now, who do you think is going to be appointing all those members? It's going to be predominantly the governor's office and the legislature that appoints those individuals for that 1 single board. The other alternative, which is put forth by CMAP, was to basically leave the system the same in terms of governments, but give the RTA more authority to direct how those monies are spent within each of the service agencies. Those are the 2 recommendations that came out of this part report. The concern here is that if we have governance changes and the governor and legislature are going to be appointing those board members, that it's going to be predominantly focused yet again and more completely on Chicago, Cook County. As Matt pointed out, you look at that pie chart up there, CTA is already getting over 50% of the emphasis.
Right.
McHenry County is a net donor to the transit system. If we have, secondly, a changed system whereby you have a single state board that is operating these things, where do you think McHenry County's funds are going to be going to? Honestly, They're going to be going to, and the taxpayers are going to support, paying off the debt of CTA. CTA is hugely debt-ridden. Metra, which serves us, is incredibly well financed because they have a great conservative structure in terms of their financing. And personally, I think that they need to be doing a little bit more bond issuance so that we can get more things done. But they've been conservative and haven't done that. CTA bonds everything. They've got so much debt that it's really a weight on the budget as a whole. And so if we change things and we become more responsible for the debt of CTA, we're not only going to be net donors as it is right now, we're going to be responsible for a huge amount of debt. So this governance thing is not just, it's not just talk, you know, it is hugely significant, and we need to take a strong approach to this as well as demanding greater services from PACE and Metra from my perspective. But that's part of the challenge that it exists with Metra, with RTA, CTA, with PACE systems. You know, it's a difficult situation right now. It's a balance. We're all working at trying to get our fair share. McHenry County is kind of pounding the table, but we need to pound the table more.
So the governance issue, that's going on now, that discussion?
All the comments that were made by Leanne with the public hearings and all of that, that's the whole point, yes.
And that's what those are all about.
The part report, which was the report requested and identified by the legislature from CMAP, has already been finished, completed, and it has been submitted. So I have copies of that report, or the highlights of that report. I'll be happy to provide that to everybody.
And if I could just jump in, I know John has something he wants to say too. The RTA strategic plan and the budget that they just presented on today doesn't really talk about governance reform. It's really the part report, the CMAP's part report that not only tackled the $730 million budget gap, but it also tackled the budget or the governance reform issue. And that was because the state legislature demanded that if you're going to talk about the $730 million, we need you to also talk about governance in this report. They linked the two together, only in the part report. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that, you know, the RTA, Kevin asked that I announce this publicly too. They're downstairs in 108D for the next hour. So if you want to go down and give public comment, you can go down and give public comment there. But that's on their budget, right? Not on the governance reform issues that was talked about just now.
And I love that's policy. I am telling you right now, politically, they're tied together completely, and you never know what's going to happen. I'm extraordinarily concerned about that. I really am. It's a small comment, but it has major ramifications, and anybody who's paying attention to the news, Chicago has major, as does Cook County actually, major budget shortfalls. And they're going to look for any way they possibly can to fill those holes. And this potentially is one of them, is to make all of us donors and help them with their transit system. So just, you know.
So we got that going for us.
Yeah.
Boone County really wants to jump on that.
We've got them surrounded. We've got them surrounded.
But also, you know, I point to all of you, and you all need to be a little bit more vocal. We do have PACE and Metra coming to our next cow.
Correct.
To make a presentation.
On their budgets.
On their budgets. But you know what? I'm from our perspective, you talk about budgets, but you also talk about how that money is going to be used, and that's governance. They're tied together. They're always tied together. So use the opportunities that we're given in a public platform and, you know, state your opinions loudly.
But
I think we should save this.
Often, Matt.
Save this recording so we can use it at every meeting, because every meeting is the same thing. We're under, right? We're under reported, or we're underrepresented. This has been forever. This is, I think what we need to work with what we have. You know, and what we have is, you know, the lifts with the vouchers, the townships. You know, the townships, they're there to help the indigent, and they are a taxing body. They can do a lot there too. They're a strong individual. And I think the other thing that the seniors need just a little bit more information on their end to where to go to get those vouchers and that call center that we discussed last month, wasn't it? We just went through this. So maybe just a little bit more of getting the information out to the seniors that do need it, that don't know how to do it, or maybe just an education part. But I gotta tell you, Pam, we went through this the last 2 meetings here at this committee, the same thing. And the representation of the 20 to 6, I've heard this for the last 8 years. This is the same, I mean, we could loop this conversation. It's not gonna change in our immediate future in the next 10 years. I think that we need to work with what we have. And we do have the resources to help. I mean, it's not that glum a problem.
Well,
I don't disagree, but I think there's a short-term program and then there's a long-term program, right?
Mhm. Well,
I
you're
mean,
welcome
how
to
long did
look
we-
at that 40-year plan,
Yeah.
but.
Well, how long did we work on Huntley? To get Metro to Huntley, it's finally, I mean, it's gonna
20
come
plus
to.
years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember learning about it 20-some plus years, but it happened, you know? So again, I agree. There's a short-term solution and plan, and then there's a longer-term solution.
We just can't lose our voice.
Yeah, but we
Right.
came here on the problem of the senior services with their rides,
Right.
right?
no,
Yeah.
And the senior
You know,
service
we've
ride,
drifted
as you
into
said, the
weeds already.
townships can
Right.
fund this on their own. That's not the issue.
No,
The
not
issue is
No.
that we divide all these little pieces up where we're already, as a community, as a county, we are funding PACE, RTA, Metro to whatever amount. I think there has to be a little bit more help, more lean from them. And we know they can produce that help with efficiencies on their part. We just know they can.
Good luck with that, man.
One argument
Yeah.
on that,
I'm-
Tracy's gonna say the same thing. Townships can't fund those on their
No, they
own.
cannot.
That's why Grafton joined the MC ride.
Oh,
At that time, it cost us $6,000 to
Yeah.
join.
The
I'm
seniors
speaking
can't wait.
Saved us
specific, I'm
150
speaking
we did that.
specifically to those who approached us on Senior Service Committee. That's all. Because obviously that $50,000 is not pulled out of space. We took that away from another entity who could have used that towards seniors. So again, we're just shuffling seniors, giving them less with, or doing less with more,
Right,
more
but
with less.
transportation for seniors is their biggest challenge.
Mhm.
And
Understood.
transportation in the northwest region of our county is
Understood.
exceptionally
why-
challenging for seniors.
That's
And-
why Pam came up with this
Yeah.
great program to actually hold over those funds, because we were not going to take those out of those, away from those people on senior services. If we could have found another route, that would effectively have given us another $50,000.
But these transportations with the townships and the village are specifically for seniors. It's not utilized by
It's not public.
everyone. So
55
therefore,
and older.
I don't believe that, they were taking money away from seniors if that's precisely what the program is used for. And like I mentioned, that for a senior to get a ride to Crystal Lake from Hebron, from Richmond, from Harvard, they're on the bus for an hour and a half, and that is not acceptable. They require some specialized services, as Pam mentioned before, and if the money is there, I don't feel that it's taking it away from a senior program.
No, it's not taken away from the program. I'm just saying that the money could have extended the
Are
program.
you crossing your fingers? Or
I'm gonna try to remember, so I remember what I'm gonna say. It's always
Okay,
something
go
to
ahead.
say.
I want
No,
to
I mean,
forget.
and quite honestly, thank you very much to all of you who are looking at the budget and increasing the levy for that program. Again, it was a community referendum that passed almost, overwhelmingly to use those funds to help seniors, and we've not increased it in 20 years.
do not tell me that that money has less value today than it did 20 years ago. So thank you to all of you who were participating in that financial conversation about doing that. I think it's extraordinarily important, and I think you get to go out to your constituents and talk about that. I think it's important, and that's it, those challenges. How do we meet the ever-growing needs of our communities? So anyway, that was my thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
As I was saying quickly, John, I don't disagree with you. I think that we have to deal with what we have to deal with, and we use practically the opportunities that exist before us. So I think you're absolutely right.
Absolutely, and it falls on the taxes to the schools,
Yep.
Springfield, and
Right.
Cook County, it's
Right.
like that in every part.
Right.
There's no
However,
growth.
I think McHenry County has been very amiable, if you will, with regards to RTA, PACE, Metra over the years. We've worked with them very positively and creatively. I think we need to be a little bit more demanding. I do. I think that we need to say, just as the RTA is going down to Springfield, the transit system is going to Springfield, and saying to the legislature, we need more support. I think that's what we need to be doing to the PACE system and to the Metro system, is saying, we need more support. And I think that's blunt, but it's absolute. We need to get our fair share, and we're not. Sorry.
No, point taken.
So I agree with what Mr. Sager said. However, I want to end this conversation maybe on a positive note, right? And I think it's important to keep in mind, we're giving over 100,000 rides this year on MC Ride. It's 100,000 rides. 20 times more, 25 times more than the township are providing in a given year. About a third to a half of those rides are for seniors. So you're talking 40,000 seniors got rides on our system this year. So this is a senior problem, but it's not, I wouldn't lump all seniors together.
Right.
There's some seniors that need that extra level of help. But for most seniors, our program works great, okay? So I want to keep everybody's mind focused on what's working well. We can still make improvements. There's always room for improvement. I think we could advocate more forcefully for improvements by PACE and Metro and everybody else. But I also want to not throw everything out and say, well, the program isn't working for people. It is. For 100,000 people, it's working. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't.
That's what I was expecting Brian to do for me, because I think we are going the same way. You just do it more eloquently than I do. I'm vinegar, you're honey. That's the difference.
But thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to kind of bring you up to speed on what's going on and where we need to focus on maybe some short-term solutions. So thanks very much.
Okay.
Well, that's fun.
Hey, we gave more time to new business than we did to our consent agenda.
We had time to give, didn't we?
Old business staff reports.
We have nothing, Chairman, for staff report today.
All right, there is a need for an executive session for land acquisition.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to go into executive session for land acquisition? Mr. Kaminsky moves to go into executive session for land acquisition. I'm saying that for Brian's benefit, so he doesn't have to correct me. Ms. Van Bergen seconds that motion to go into executive session for land acquisition. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. favor?
Aye.
Okay, move back over to regular session. You need to change anything? You're all set. Okay, I'll attain, nothing further needed, entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Kaminsky, Mr. Kunkel, all those in favor? Aye.